Hi, folks. Just wanted to let y'all know about another bonus episode that'll drop tomorrow. This one is with Thuy Tran, Festival and Exhibitions Director at CAM, the Center for Asian American Media. Thuy and I will chat about this year's CAM Fest, which kicks off this Thursday. Visit cammedia.org for more info. That's CAAMEDIA.org. All right, on with today's show.
Here's the story with that. So, moved up here, and I just want to throw this tidbit in because literally I moved up here because of skateboarding. Yeah. That was really it. When people ask, well, why'd you move? I was like, this was the pinnacle of skateboarding. Like in 1994, San Francisco was the place for street skate. Every video was here. All the big names in skateboarding were up here. It was before it kind of transitioned back to Southern California.
That was Danny Montoya, owner of Butterfly Joint and Café in the Outer Richmond. I'm Jeff, and this is Storied San Francisco, a podcast all about the artists, activists, and small businesses that make this city so special. In this episode, we'll meet and get to know Danny. He'll take us through his early years in the LA area and lead us to why and when he chose to move to SF. Here's Danny.
I had family up here, so we would come here during the summer. So my dad's sister, my aunt, she and her daughter lived here. They lived in the Sunset, actually. But they moved around a lot. But one of the places that I remember most distinctly was on Taraval. So we would go visit them, every summer, every other summer.
Do you remember your first time coming up here?
I don't know if I remember that. I'll say this. You know how people remember things because of photos?
Yeah.
So I don't know if my memory is that photo or if it's I do have distinct memories of certain trips, but I don't know which trip it was. But it's probably 7 or 8.
Were you aware that it, did it feel different than LA? Or
oh yeah, for sure. It felt like a city.
Okay.
Because, living in LA, we didn't have especially back then, the train system wasn't they brought it back.
It's really awesome.
Yeah,
by the
so
way.
they have the train system down there now. Metrolink, Metrolink didn't. We ended up. I was born in Burbank, but we ended up moving out to Santa Clarita Valley.
Okay.
And now Santa Clarita Valley has a Metrolink that goes through it. So my stepdad.
Are you saying Santa Clarita?
Yeah.
Like Magic Mountain?
Yes.
Oh man.
Yeah.
I love that place.
Yeah.
I'm a roller coaster fanatic.
Oh yeah. So that was our backyard.
Okay.
Yeah, we had summer passes or whatever.
Yeah.
All throughout high school.
I'm one of the best amusement parks, roller coasters, but also the oranges from right there.
Oh, from around there.
Yeah.
Valencia.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it was it was a place to grow up. I can't say anything bad. I know a lot of people. Obviously, I have friends that grew up there that still live near there, and then there's people that I've met up here that grew up down there, but we never knew each other, whatever.
There,
and, I feel like a lot of people just always just shit on suburbs, and I've been guilty of that for sure. But I'm always I don't know, man. Me and a lot of my friends ended up doing pretty cool shit. So I don't know. Was it that place? Was it we happened to meet each other at a moment in time that was, hardcore music and the punk scene and skateboarding and all this cultural stuff that I don't know. I don't know if it was that or who knows, but I do know that we grew up there at that place.
Yeah.
And on both my hands, I can count each friend did this and this and this, and they're all doing amazing stuff.
Nice.
So I don't know, but would I live there now? No. But I grew up there. So.
I'm gonna guess we're roughly the same age.
Yeah, I'm 47.
Okay, I'm whatever. You don't know.
You're I'm slightly older than that. But...
We are roughly the same age.
Yeah, we're roughly the same age. Yeah.
I did hit 50 last fall.
Oh, nice. Congrats.
So thank you. But I
think it's great getting older.
I mean, it is. We can't do anything.
Yeah,
really. We can do things, but
yeah.
But also, I'm from Texas, and so we're roughly the same age. I was in some of those same scenes: punk rock, skateboarding.
Yeah.
Actually, the skateboarding led to, I would say, punk rock, and then that led me to leave Texas and travel a little bit. And the long story short is that I ended up here. And so I think there's
there's a lot of
Southern California, not Texas.
Yep.
But also, I heard you mention Thrasher earlier.
Right,
and it's
right.
Thrasher was fucking huge. Thrasher
huge,
and Transworld were huge in our world. And despite like all the cool skate parks and skateboard companies in Texas, my friends and I kind of always just like held Southern California, especially San Francisco, maybe to a little bit lesser extent, in very high regard.
For sure.
So like you were kind of living my dream.
We were living, it was crazy, and that's the thing is I always look back to that, and that's why sometimes you'll when you talk about where you grew up or whatever, I'll just say LA area, just because it's easier for people to understand, right?
Yeah.
But in essence, I'm like, I did grow up in LA. Mm-hmm. Like we literally drove everywhere all the time and skated everywhere. We'd would drive to Venice, drive to Santa Monica, like drive to the Van Nuys courthouse, like anything that was in a skate video, we had access to
was your home,
all the time.
Home turf.
And we were there all the time, So yes, I was in Santa Clarita Valley, but like we were all, and all our friends lived in the valley, and we would just like pick each other up and then get to LA, like, quote unquote LA. And, but so to me, it's like, yes, I totally grew up in Santa Clarita Valley, but I always say like LA or LA area, cause that's where we spent our time. Yeah. We weren't just like chilling in Santa Clarita Valley all the time.
And this, if we're to kind of generalize, mid to late 80s, early 90s was like your time to grow up.
Yeah. I moved here in 94. So, and when my parents got divorced, and I always look back at this too, and this is a big part of my growing up, is when my parents got divorced when I was 5.
Okay. And
this was like not too long after we went on a big family trip to Colombia. So both my parents are Colombian. My dad's from Medellin and my mom's from Bogota. And they met in LA. They moved, here. Okay. Met in LA, and my grandparents, like most of the families, on both sides, immigrated here. Okay. Except for a few. So like my uncle had stayed back in Colombia. He wasn't allowed to leave. Like it's very strange. It's very interesting. That story is a very interesting story. And when they divorced, we eventually had to move out of the house. So we moved to a trailer park. So we were in a trailer park for the majority of my childhood. So from when I was 5 until just entering 9th grade.
And do you have siblings?
Yeah, I have a brother.
Okay.
Older brother, 2 years.
So y'all were together, I'm guessing.
Yeah, so my mom and my brother and I lived in the trailer park. Okay. And then my dad had moved to the valley. So, and it was every other weekend.
Weekends,
so he'd get us every other weekend, and we go to the valley. He's usually in like Van Nuys, or he lived in a few places in the valley. But the trailer park is really what I remember most of my childhood, because I only was in high school when we moved to Valencia. That was in Canyon Country. That's like an outskirt part of Santa Clarita Valley. It's like a far east. It's like when you're on the way to Antelope Valley. Yeah. Like out to like Lancaster and Palmdale, the desert. Yeah.
Deserty, yeah.
So Canyon Country is the kind of far east end of Santa Clarita Valley. So I was in that trailer park from age 5 to pretty much 13.
When did you start skating?
In there at the trailer park. So
how old were you?
So it was I was probably 8. I think I was 8. I was probably 3rd grade. Yeah. Okay. And I was also way into basketball. So I was doing basketball and skating. And then it was just like I probably didn't skate. I skated probably from 8 to like 10. Okay. And then I probably didn't skate again till high school. Oh, okay. So it was probably like, there was probably like a 3 or 4 year gap right there where I just played basketball. I was just obsessed with basketball.
All right. And what about music?
And I was way, and that whole period. When did music happen? Oh, that was all then. Like from 8 on, I was way into like, it was funny too, because he was just like kind of just straight out of central casting. Oh, shit. What you would expect, like a high schooler growing up in the late 80s in a trailer park. Like he just had like this kind of like Farrah Fawcett winged hair and wore like a denim jacket. Feathered. And like was weighing, all feathered hair. And, introduced me to Metallica. Oh, yeah. And this is like, and it's funny to bring up Metallica now, because like, oh man, it's just not what it was. And, and again, it's like, you can say that about any band, but like, I'm not even joking that how he introduced me to Metallica was their demo tape. And the demo tape was called No Life Till Leather. Right. And it was like Xerox copied. Mm-hmm. And I just remember being like, this is amazing, you know. But by the time he introduced me to that, they were already big. Yeah. So like, but mostly in Europe. So like, you know, when I first got the Ride the Lightning album, mm-hmm. and you open up, because it was all on cassette. So like you open up, it had a big gatefold. Yeah. And it just had these stadium pictures. Photos. And I'm like, whoa, they're huge. You know, I didn't know that. But then I would like talk to friends at school and like nobody would know who they were except for like the straight up heshers that were just like, oh man, I like your patch. You know, like that's a cool patch you got on your denim jacket. So anyway, I was like I was an interesting breed because I was just like wearing like Lakers shorts with like a denim, jacket with a Metallica patch.
Did you have like a mullet or anything fun? Like a feather?
For sure, there was probably a moment where, because my hair is very curly, so there was for sure a moment where I probably had like a bushy, like it never got past my shoulders because I just can't.
But a little bit of curtain.
There was definitely some party in the back. Yeah. And yeah, so that was like my whole thing until maybe just after 9th grade. So I had to move. So my parents, my stepdad and my mom met in that zone when we were in the trailer park. Mm-hmm. And then they got married that summer when I was transitioning from 8th to 9th. Mm-hmm. So then when they got married, we moved to Valencia, and then we
was that high school for you? 9th?
That's high school. Okay. Yeah, 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th.
Can be a different
4 years. Yeah. So my whole elementary school was spent there in the trailer park, and then those final 4 years in high school was just at that house in Valencia, where my mom and stepdad still live there. Yeah. Probably not for too much longer, but they're still there. Mm-hmm. And then I picked up skating again in probably the end of 9th grade, sophomore year, because I met some other friends. And then so this was the transition. So that was from the trailer park Bones Brigade days. And then fast forward a few years in the early 90s, then it started becoming street skating and small wheels and big pants and all this. So that's when I started skating again, because the friends that I started making, they were skating, and they're like, oh man, do you skate? And I'm like, well, I used to, but I haven't had a skateboard in a while. And they definitely didn't look like that. You know what I mean? Like, I remember entering high school just playing basketball like crazy, and then that last year of 9th grade was when I started skating again, and then the rest of high school was just skateboarding and
were you still doing
going to shows?
Street or
it was all street. I never was like, because we didn't have skate parks back then. So the closest
even
skate park was Powell Peralta. There was a Powell skate park in Santa Barbara or near Santa Barbara. Yeah. So we'd have to drive and over an hour, about an hour to go. So we'd go maybe once every several months, but we were just strictly street, you know?
But you said going to shows. Did you play music?
I never played music. Okay. Yeah, I mean, I like dibbled. I didn't play music till college, I'll say that. Like I played music with my friends in college, but it was like, we were just
goofing off,
dicking around. Yeah. But all my friends were always in bands and doing stuff. But in high school, it was more, like my friends would start little funny joke bands or whatever. Yeah. But it was just any really good hardcore show that I'd want to go to. Usually it was like in Hollywood. Yeah. So they're always playing in Hollywood. So we just drive to Hollywood. Mm-hmm. And then sometimes in San Diego. Because San Diego had a huge, amazing hardcore scene in the 90s.
So I'm
we would go
very familiar.
Down to their
Gravity Records, that scene.
Oh man, Gravity. Yeah, and it was just
Heroin
like Drive Like
Jehu.
Yeah. So it was just a great time.
And so was it ever a question, I guess this is a 2 or 3 part question. Was it ever a question whether you would go to college and where?
No. So
was it always
I was the first, so being first generation born here, my parents didn't go to college. But that's the thing. My dad went to, I would say, the equivalent of like community college or something like this. But he was, he had like engineering background, and he when I was growing up, he was working for Xerox. Okay. And he had a pretty good job there and doing great, but then he broke off and did his own thing and wanted to start his own businesses. But they both didn't go to like United States University. I'll say it that way. So for sure, in my mind, it was never, and I don't know, I'm sure my mom just was always saying it. Oh yeah. So when you go to college, go to college. But it wasn't like a, this pressure cooker thing. It was just like, oh yeah, so when you go to college. So then when high school was ending And she's like, okay, so, where do you want to look for? And my stepdad was a huge part in that too, because he was a workers' comp attorney.
Okay.
And he had, obviously gone to universities and he was very much like, oh, I'll help you. Yeah. He's like, oh yes, I'll help you with the process, whatever. And so, in my mind, I was just like, oh, I don't know, San Diego State or San Francisco State. But I was also very lucky because my friend one of our skate crew from down there, who was a year older than me, he came to San Francisco State the year before I did. That's also a huge part of that story too. And again, it's funny when you're older and you think back to that time. One, we had crazy freedom. My mom was amazing. My mom was, and it's really weird, I gotta say, because she can be a worrywart. Mm-hmm. She can be very anxious about just life in general. Mm-hmm. So I always look back to her and I'm like, man, it's so crazy the things she let us do. Because we would do road trips up here. Oh, in high school.
Just the teenager kids.
Just
you
us.
and your friends.
Yeah, man. Like we were.
Oh, you're so 16, much closer than 17, I was. I'm so
we would
jealous.
Just drive up here.
Yeah.
For a long weekend, and my friend, his name was Alphonse. He lived in the dorms, and he made all his skate friends. So, because that's the thing is, it was that period in time in the early '90s to mid '90s, skateboarding culture was just kind of. I would say it just became more mainstream.
Yeah.
So when I started skating again in 9th grade with my friends, that group there, it was still, you were just kind of the outcast.
It was skateboarding is not a crime.
Yeah, that whole
thing.
era. Yeah, the cops, you always get your board taken away, or they'd break your board, and it was just this whole you were just seen as a nuisance, and then also too, you weren't seen as it wasn't cool. At school it wasn't cool.
It wasn't in the Olympics.
Nobody was nobody cared.
Right.
And then that whole 4 years, it's funny because I got to ride that wave of seeing it just explode. Like Tony Hawk's video game came out. Yep. And by the time we were juniors and seniors, all the jocks and all the quote unquote cool kids started skating, and they'd be like, oh, you guys want to skate this spot? And we were just like, well, that's so crazy that this has become this thing.
We became visible suddenly.
And again, it's that's the thing is to us, it was just a really, again, thinking back to it now, and you wouldn't have these words when you're a kid, but it was escapism. It was the perfect escape.
Yeah.
That you can high school is horrible. I don't care what anyone says. High school is the worst.
Correct.
It's the worst.
Yes.
You know what I mean? It's when people are honestly at their worst. And it's not anyone's fault really. It's you're developmentally your brain is going through such a crazy hormonal thing that only happens twice in your life. When you're a toddler and when you're hitting puberty. And then it's just this identity thing where people that's why all the fights happen and all the crazy shit.
Yeah.
So that was
some people are definitely okay going with that flow that's predetermined.
Sure.
A lot of us aren't.
I don't know.
I don't know about for you, but music and skating were these worlds that already existed, and I could just slide in and carve out my own identity in them.
It was amazing. And two, it was, I know for a lot of people it gives you a sense of belonging and so on. And for me, honestly, I was always a very pretty independent person. So even when I skated, I'd skate with my friends, but there was lots of nights where I'd literally just go out and skate
on
alone.
Your own.
I'd be I just want to I just want to figure this trick out.
Yeah.
And I just want to do it alone. And I don't want an audience, and I would just go out and skate all alone. And it was the same with basketball. I'd literally go to there was a court down the way from us. Where we live there in Valencia, there's these things called paseos, which are just these long walkable pathways. And it led right to this park, and I'd play basketball there, and I would just play there all night and just do pickup games with adults and all this. Yeah. But that was my ideal. I just would do things that I was very interested in, and I didn't need anyone else to do it with. But then skateboarding was cool because then I was oh yeah, I do want to hang out with you guys, and we all had the same sense of humor. We're all into the same stuff. So it was really a great time. But anyway, just coming back to coming up to here to San Francisco, we would take all these trips up here and stay with Fonz, and then I met all his friends that he went to school with, And then by the time I moved up here the next year, it was just kind of already established.
You already
I
had
was
friends.
just I already had my crew, and we all would skate. I'd just jump on the bus, and we'd all meet at a spot, and then just spend weekends just jumping on and off the buses and
94
going to different places. Yeah, that was 1994. Yeah, I moved here August 94, right before my birthday is August 27th, so it was right before my birthday.
Okay, got it. And you said you spent about 5 years at State?
Yeah, it was because I had to get my credential as well. So I did my, my BA in liberal arts, and then I got my credential, which is another year and a half program, I think it was. Mm-hmm. So I graduated in 99.
Okay.
And then started teaching, and then I just taught the whole time. And
2 questions. When did you move out of the dorm, and where did you move? And then the other question is, did you teach at SF public schools?
No. So here's the story with that. So moved up here, and I just want to throw this tidbit in, because literally I moved up here because of skateboarding.
Yeah, hell yeah.
That was really it. When people ask, well, why'd you move? I was like, this was the pinnacle of skateboarding. Yeah. Like in 1994, San Francisco was the place for street skate. Every video was here. All the big names in skateboarding were up here. It was before it kind of transitioned back to Southern California. Like now most of the big names are down in San Diego area, like Costa Mesa and Orange County and stuff. Mm-hmm. But then it was like San Francisco was it, and Thrasher and Jake Phelps, and it was just everyone you saw in skate videos you would just see on the streets. You'd go out and skate, and we'd be like, oh my gosh, it's that person. Oh, this pro. Yeah. And so it was the place. So to me, it was just I'll go to school up there and I'll skate. And it was that first year for sure when I lived in the dorms, it was just horrific grades and skateboarding all the time.
You're I have the report card to prove it.
Yeah. It was just not even, it was just a throwaway year. Yeah. But it was, to me, the most important year, because I was away from my family. I was living alone, in the dorms. I met all the, these lifelong friends. Mm-hmm. And then, the next year I'm okay, now I got to get my act together. I got to get these grades. I want to be a teacher and so on.
Do you know now, looking back, do you know what it was that made you gravitate toward wanting to teach?
Well, that one was, so this is funny. So because I don't know how going to college is now. Obviously.
Besides expensive.
Obviously, yes, it's expensive. But I'm talking about once you get accepted to a college and you pick your first courses and you pick your major and all this, obviously it's all digital now. Back then it was a giant telephone book. Do you remember this? It was a gigantic telephone book size thing that had all the courses, all the majors, etc. And you had to declare a major. And I remember just looking through it, and I just went, it was alphabetical order. So I was just counting's fine. Because I didn't know. I'm just how do you, know what you want to do?
18, yeah.
Yeah, I was 17, man. I was and even then, again, being 47 now and looking back, I was a baby. I was a baby until I was 20 something.
Right.
You know what I mean? I was a straight up child. And I'm but I was a really good independent child. But I'm I was a child. I'm so lucky nothing horrible happened to me, because I was just wandering through life hey man, you know what I mean? Your sense of mortality. I was just out and out skateboarding in San Francisco till 3-4 in the morning all the time. Buses, you know what I mean? Walk-in places, and nothing bad ever happened to me. You know what I mean? So
knock on wood.
So anyway, so I just was counting, sure, And my mom was stoked because, again, this is an immigrant from Colombia, and her whole story to me was you're going to go to college, you're going to get a lot of money, and you're going to buy me a house. And it was this whole thing, and I'm sure. But in my head, I was just I don't, and this is the thing, I don't know. There's something about the way my brain works that I've always been down this road of if something doesn't make sense to me, I'm out in a minute. So when I was 8, I left the Catholic Church. My mom was Catholic. I was raised Catholic. I was going to CCD. And when I was 8, I was just
Was this after communion?
No. Yes. I
did your first communion.
I got first communion, but I never
and then
got.
You're out.
I never got confirmed.
Dude, this is
confirmed.
I have the same story.
Yeah,
I'm not messing with you.
So,
I was first communion and out.
Yeah,
I would skip CCD.
Yeah. Oh, see, I never skipped it. I was just okay, I got to go to this thing, and I remember at some point when I was 8 years old, I was I don't think I believe in this, Mom. And she was just like, what do you mean? You know, and it's like a very, especially then, that's literally
Heresy,
sacrilege. Yeah, you're just what do you mean?
Dios mío.
And I was just like, yeah, it's just not I don't get this, you know? And it was really from this incident that happened at CCD where, you know, these people that they hire to teach these classes, I don't know if they're volunteers or what, but they're definitely not educators. No. So at one of the classes, I remember this distinctly. I just asked, I was like, hey, so what if the Bible is just stories? And the woman who was teaching the class was just went from 0 to like upset. Like, how dare you? What do you mean? Why are you questioning this? I'm like, oh, I'm just serious. Like, what if somebody wrote this and just left it on a dirt road and they're just kind of like, you know, now people would say like trolling. You know what I mean? Like, I didn't have that in my head, but I was just like, that was the emphasis was like, so what if somebody's trolling you and just threw this book on this road and just to see what happens, and then somebody picked up, it's like, oh my gosh, this is this is the word, we need to follow this. So I was like, how do we know that's not what happened? And she, because the apostles, and she went in this diatribe and kicked me out. Oh, shit. And I had to go to the priest. Then my mom had to come. His name was Father McNamara. And she had to come pick me up. And she's, of course, embarrassed and just like so bummed. And I was at that meeting. I was like, yeah, I just don't believe in this stuff. Like, I don't know why I have to do this if I don't believe in it. She's like, just do it, you know? And it was one of those things where I get it. Like, and it's nothing, I don't think, I won't squarely put it on being an immigrant, but just like being a parent and maybe and being an immigrant, you have this vision of what you want this thing to be. Yeah. If you're just a parent, for sure, you're like, I would love for you to go this direction. And I was the polar opposite. But this is the thing. At the end of the day, I look back on it, and the thing that saved me was like, I wasn't a total fuck up. Right. That's the only thing that saved me. I never drank. That was a huge one because like when I think back, like her letting me go on these trips, we would go to fucking Vegas. I'd be like, Mom, we want to go to Vegas. Todd, like my friend Todd, that's like 5 years older than us. So I was like, oh yeah. He was like 21 and we were like 16, 15. Yes. And he's like, I'm going to Vegas. We're like, we want to go. And I'd tell my mom, hey, we can go to Vegas for the weekend. She's like, oh, where are you staying? I'm like, I think we're going to stay at this hotel. She's like, okay. You know, and we would just literally go. Wow. All of us stay in one room. We'd have to sneak in because they didn't allow it. Right. But anyway, I'm just saying all that to say, like, it's almost like she trusted that I wasn't going to do anything crazy because I had proven myself up to that point. That I'm just like, Mom, look, I stay out late and I skateboard, but I'm like, that's it. Like, you know, and meanwhile, she had friends that like her kids were already starting to get, you know, addicted to things, or like they were getting in and out of the like trouble with the law, and I never had any, like I've never gotten a ticket, I've never gotten arrested, I've never, so I think that's literally the only thing.
That's where our similar paths diverge.
Yeah, you're like, well, Danny, if you want some storied SF,
I don't need to implicate myself.
Yeah,
here,
but anyway, yeah. So at that meeting with Father McNamara, I pled my case, and she was just like, okay, Father McNamara, like, what do we do? And I think in her mind, she was like, this dude is going to be like, no, you can't do this. You got to be staying here, Catholic way. And he said, you know, Isabel, if God is going to find him, God is going to find him. But you can't force God on him. And I was like, yes, Father McNamara, you are correct, you know? And that was that. And then she was like, okay, but you have to go to church. I'm all, no, that's my point. You
were 8?
I was 8 years old, 3rd grade. And I tell my daughter this all the time because I'm like, look, man, like, if there's something that we're doing that you don't believe in, tell me. You know what I mean? I'm like, don't feel bad about telling me, because I'm all, this is what I did when I was younger than you, and it wasn't because of my friends. That's the thing, is like a lot of time, like especially in the media, when I hear all this LGBT bullshit where people are just like, oh, you know, it's, you know, the culture is starting to trying to make these kids do this thing. And I could see, like, if somebody knew that story back then, they're like, somebody made him do this. Like, he's learning this from television, or his friends are doing
video
this.
Games.
Dude, all my friends went to they all got confirmed. Like, my Jewish friends, like, did their bar mitzvahs. None of my friends were like, I don't believe in this religion. I want to leave this religion. I was literally the only one that was just like,
and
this
just
doesn't
came
make sense.
From within
it was just
you.
me. Like, I was just like in that class being like, listening to this shit every day. And again, it's the meetings thing. Like what I was talking about, like me in meetings. Like, I don't just sit in things and just am like falling asleep. I'm like I'm like actually listening to them and being like, why are we doing this? Like and not in a bad way. I'm just like, wait, why are we doing this? Okay, we're doing this to solve the houselessness crisis or something. If it was something like that, and people are saying things and I'm like, oh, this makes sense, I'd be like, okay, what could I do to help? But if somebody's just like telling me something that at the end of the day, the only thing that comes back in my brain is like, you're just trying to control me and you're trying to control everyone. And not in a, like, the way things are now, like how everything's a conspiracy and blah, blah, blah. It's more of that, like, when you're a child and you're just like, why do we do this again? Wait, why are we going here? It's like that, you know, like, and you know, maybe I was that annoying child where you're like, stop asking why, you know? But I was just kind of like, that's how my brain worked.
I don't think that's annoying.
Yeah. And I'm just saying it because that story to me is how my life has played out. Because I've never been just like, oh, I get it. Like, we have to do this. Okay, I'll do that. Like, we have to do this. Okay, I'll do that. If somebody's like, this is the road you have to do, I'm always like, why? You know, and I'm like, I don't want to do that. I want to do this, you know?
Anti-establishment.
Yes. A lot.
Let's get back to teaching, and we can kind of go, like, take us through where you taught and then getting out of teaching.
Yes, yeah, because you asked how I chose teaching. So it was the accounting. It was just a placeholder. Then once I was at school, I was actually still, I wasn't sure. But I do know as I was a child, when I'd go to the dentist, I'd be like, oh, I can see myself being a dentist. I'd go to the doctor, I'd be like, oh, I can see myself being a doctor. When I was a student, you know, I'd be like, oh, if I was a teacher, I'd teach it this way. So I always, for sure, wanted to do something that had to do with people. Like, I knew that just because that's what I always had that strong sense. Whenever I'd visit somebody that was doing something for someone else, I'd be like, oh, I want to do that. I want to talk. Well, it's not so serious. It's just like being able to talk to people and like make them laugh. And, you know, I'd be like, oh, I can do this. Like, I'd be a good dentist because I'd try to make jokes, or I'd do this. And I'd be like, I want to be a teacher. I don't want to be a doctor. So it was never so much focusing in on what I want to be, but I knew I wanted to work with people.
Okay.
And then when I was in the dorms, I had a friend who was probably 2 years older than me, and she was in the teaching program. She's like, you'd be a good teacher. I was like, huh. That's when I picked teaching. Was that friend inspired me to do it, because she was just like, yeah, you know, I think you'd be good at it. And I was saying, you know what, I've thought about that for sure before, and I was like, yeah, that's totally what I would want to do. You know, it made sense.
And this is about your second or so
year? That was
year?
in the dorm, so that was just
that first
few months.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Not even half a year yet, I don't think. So then,
So does that mean moving down the alphabet from accounting to education?
Education is just A to E. And then I just went to my counselor and changed my major to education. That's why they said liberal arts, get a liberal arts degree, and then get the credential. And I said, okay, cool. So yeah.
So you get out and you're teaching. Where did that happen?
So this is why I didn't end up in public school. So in the teaching program, you do have to do hours at public school. So I was at a school actually not far from here. It's not there anymore. It was called Cabrillo, and it's on 25th. If you ever drive in on 25th, you'll see the school, but now it's Unified District. I think it's like a teacher's center or something, but it's basically admin offices there.
Got it.
That school turned into admin offices, or a teacher training program or something like this. So I first did my teacher study stuff there at Cabrillo with this kindergarten teacher named June Diaz, and I was there for a year, and it was great. And then
Were you Mr. Danny or Mr. Montoya?
I was Mr. Montoya. Yeah,
Okay.
in public school it was Mr. Montoya.
Okay.
And then I was at Cesar Chavez in the kindergarten class there.
Okay.
And then I had to do a preschool. It was one of the only public preschools at the time. It was called Tule Elk. It's still there. And we actually know some people in this neighborhood, I think, that their kids go to Tule Elk. And so I did I had to do observation because I had early childhood education. So while this is all happening, my girlfriend at the time, who was in the teaching program as well, she was working at a school called Live Oak, which is a independent school.
Okay.
And she got me a job there for after school. So I was like, oh, this is perfect because I just need hours working with children.
And that worked.
That worked. So I was working after school there. And then since it was an independent school, they were like, oh, would you want to sub too? And I said, sure, whenever I have time. Because I was also working at school. So the whole time I was working at state, or I was going to state, I was working for the vice president of student affairs.
Okay.
Through the work study program. So that was one of my loans.
Yeah,
so one of my loans was
oh yeah, there you go.
Work study. So I worked there all 4 years. They found money for me because they were just like, oh, we want you to work with us, Danny. You know. And I was like, yep, I like working here. So I worked there, and then I would work at Live Oak, and then I would sub whenever I can. And then when I got my credential, it was in the winter, so it was mid-year. So I was like, oh, okay, well, I got my credential. I'm done, but I'm not really going to get hired right now. And at that moment, they needed some people in the middle school. So I taught middle school.
Much different than kindergarten.
Yes, yep.
Smells different,
but it was great. Yeah, it smells different. But it was awesome because especially that particular last semester, that year, those 6 months or whatever that half year was, it was just awesome because that group of kids, again, it was just like this perfect. It was just like perfect time for me to be one of their teachers.
That was Danny Montoya from Butterfly Joint and Café. Be sure to check out part 2, which drops next Tuesday, wherever you get podcasts. Music for Storied San Francisco was produced, performed, and curated by Otis McDonald. Aaron Lim of Bitch Talk Podcast is our contributing producer. And the show is produced and hosted by me, Jeff Hunt. Now in our 6th season, we have more than 200 episodes available on our website, storiedsf.com, or wherever you listen to podcasts. If you're able to, please rate and review the show, and drop us a line at storiedsf@gmail.com. Thanks for listening. Keep rejecting those silly doom loop narratives about our city. Stay wacky, weird, healthy, and creative. And we'll see you next time on Storied San Francisco. We acknowledge and respect the first humans of the unceded land we call San Francisco, the Ramaytush Ohlone. We condemn the genocide of these and other tribes across the Western Hemisphere. We honor their legacy and history, and we support rematriation and sovereignty efforts.
This podcast is a proud member of the BFF.FM podcast network. Learn more at podcasts.bff.fm.
BFF.FM, best frequencies forever.